All right, it's Conway Show on KFI AM 640. We are just weeks away from voting, everybody. And we've got the guy who is in charge of all of LA County when it comes to voting. Dean Logan, nice to see you, man.
Good to be back.
It seems like you and I always get together this time of year to talk about voting,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
Yeah. Now, you're in charge of how many people? How many people are vote in LA County or registered to vote?
So right now we have about 5.4 million registered voters.
Wow. And what do you expect turnout to be?
You know, it's so hard to predict that. It's a little bit of a crystal ball exercise, but I think that what we know is this year California is at play in this
that's
presidential primary. So they moved the primary from June to March. So I think we're going to see higher than usual turnout. You know, maybe, I'm an optimist, but maybe we'll get up there in the 70 percentile range.
Really? Wow. That is optimistic, huh? All right. Now, if somebody says to you in April, Dean Logan, man, I wish I could vote, but it was just so tough to vote this year. Don't you want to strangle that guy?
That would be a little frustrating,
Right.
given all the options that are available now. I
But-
mean, we really worked hard to create a voting experience that meets people where they're at, makes it convenient, accessible, and available. So we're hoping to eliminate all those excuses.
And what was on the table when you first said, all right, let's expand it from 1 day? Did somebody say, let's go for 50 days? And you're like, well, I don't know, 50 seems like a lot. How did you end up at 11 days?
Well, as you can imagine, that really comes down to negotiations in legislation. That was an enabling bill that was passed in Sacramento. Ultimately, that came down to how do we ensure that we have 2 full weekends available for voting?
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
if we're going to
Okay.
open 2 weekends before the election, then might as well be open every day in between those 2 weekends as well.
Right. Now, if somebody, let's say this happens, okay? You're voting for candidate A, and you vote on a Monday, like the first maybe, or Saturday, the first available voting day, and then that person murders somebody. Can you change your vote?
Nope. Once that ballot is in the ballot box, that's a secret ballot, and
Is that right?
And it's done.
All right. Now, I heard on the commercials, I think some kid on KFI was doing them in the evening, but that you can track your vote online?
Yeah, so if you're a vote by mail voter, you can track your vote online to make sure that we got it back, that
Oh,
we
really? Okay.
verified your signature, and that ultimately it was counted.
Okay. Now, I'm sure, you're not going to admit this on the air, and I'll probably get in trouble for asking, but that whole Iowan debacle had to have you smiling.
Smiling is an interesting term. I mean, I think that anytime when you do this kind of work, when you see something like that, there's half of you that cringes because
Right.
you think, oh, by the grace of God, that could be me. And then the other side of you, to be honest with you, is a little empathetic because it's a complex process to navigate, and you're trying to do new things, trying to serve people, and so my heart goes out to the folks there. Now, all that said, there's some huge differences between what happened in Iowa and what's happened here. That was a caucus run
Right.
by the political parties. This is an election run by government officials. We have more voters here than the entire state of Iowa. So
Wow. In LA County?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy, huh?
And while we are introducing a new system and new technology, we've tested this. We did a mock election. We've been very public about it, and so I think that we can have a great deal of confidence that we're not going to see the kind of circumstances that you saw in Iowa during that caucus.
All right, so if you get a call from the governor of Iowa saying, hey, you guys really knocked it out in LA County, can you slide up here and help us out? Would you do it?
You know what? We'd be happy to share with them what we did here.
All right, good for you. All right, Dean Logan is with us. He's the guy in charge of all voting for LA County. I noticed that this year we're pretty light on measures. I think there's only one state measure. I think Proposition or Measure 13.
Yeah, there's one state measure, rent control measure. Locally here in LA County, most of the county, not the entire county, but most of the county will be also voting on Measure FD, which is a fire protection measure, 911 measure. There's another county proposition with regard to citizen oversight of law enforcement, but primarily the ballot is full of contests with candidates to winnow down the number of candidates that'll show up on your November ballot.
I see. Okay, when people go to vote in that 11-day period, they're not a vote by mail voter, and they have 11 days to vote. What are the typical hours in those stations that are open?
Yeah, so generally vote centers will be open from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. standard across that period. The exception, of course, being election day, where we'll have the normal 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. polling hours. There may be some locations that we end up having extended hours on the weekends or the days leading up right to the election, but the standard hours will be 9 to 5.
Okay. Now, I know this is not going to happen, but if it does, if some idiot gets drunk or forgot they vote and they voted twice, that's a serious offense in LA County, right?
It's a serious offense. I think the good news is we have systems to prevent you from doing that. If you attempt to do that,
That's great.
We may make a little referral to our friend, the district attorney, on that. So if there's anybody out there thinking of gaming the system, it is a serious offense. It's a felony offense, but there are checks and balances built into the system to ensure that we'll note that if that happens.
That's fantastic, right? Because everybody ultimately just wants to keep, the process clean.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, and you pull this off, with 5.4 million people, that's a big, huge deal.
It is a big deal, and I think it's important also just to kind of put that in historical context. That sadly, the history in LA County and in the country is that we don't necessarily have an issue of people trying to over participate. We have actually an issue of not enough people trying to participate in the election, and that's
Right.
what we've been trying to focus on, is that tension between making sure we have the adequate security in place, but that we also open the process in a way that encourages participation.
Okay. All right. What is the difference here? I always hear vote center and polling place. What's the difference between it?
So vote center, I would describe it this way: a vote center is sort of a mega polling place. So polling places are what we would call historically is that place, that one place that you as a voter are assigned to go to vote on election day.
Right.
The difference now with a vote center is that you can go to any vote center in the county, so you aren't limited to one location. You can go anywhere in the county. So if it's easier for you to go on your lunch hour when you're at work, or when you're dropping your kids off at their sporting event in the evening, or you're out at the farmer's market on the weekend, you can go to whatever location is most convenient for you.
Okay. And again, you have to register for vote by mail. I believe it's February 25th.
Yes, if you're going to request a vote by mail ballot, we need to have that request in by February 25th, and then the voted ballot needs to be back in the mail to us, postmarked no later than Election Day, which is March 3rd.
Okay. I always ask you this, and you're always, very willing to come forward and take a chance here. And it's so cool. I hope you don't stop doing it this year. Who are you voting for?
I'm voting for a number of people. It's a
Oh,
long
man.
ballot.
It's always, you tell Petros and Money who you're voting for and everybody, but here. All right, you did a great job. The word is everywhere. I don't know what your budget is just on mailing, but your postal budget must be enormous.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge county and a richly diverse county in every sense of the word. We've got urban areas, rural areas. We've got cultural diversity, language diversity, and in our age demographics even. So it's a big undertaking, and especially with the amount of change going on this year with the earlier primary, we think it's important that we get it right this time out of the gate. Over time, as this new model takes place and people get used to it, I think that it'll require less of that. But this first time out, we felt it was important to make that investment.
Okay, because they're expecting fewer people to vote in March than November. A lot of the state measures have been pushed towards November. Or how many are we going to see? Do you know in November?
Yeah, they won't certify those until later in the spring. But
Okay.
I think you can count on. I would guess at least 10 or more state measures
Really?
on the ballot in
Oh, boy.
November.
Oh, well, that's good for us. A lot of commercials for vote on this, or don't vote for that, or this will kill your kids if you don't vote for this. It's unbelievable. Real quickly, what is your annual budget for the entire county? Are you in the billions?
No, we're in the millions. So I mean, our department budget is about 300 million, a little
Really?
short of 300 million. But
Wow.
that includes the recorder and the county clerk functions too. So that's a little bit out of context.
Good for you. I mean, to be able to manage this in LA County, where we're bigger than most, a lot of states, and to manage it, so coolly, and to put this in, 11-day voting period. I don't see that in any other states or any other counties. Is anybody else doing it?
Well, there are other counties that are adopting the vote center model. I think the technology and the approach that we've taken is rather unique here. I think we recognize that because, as you say, we're such a large jurisdiction, we're in a position here to lead. I think it's something that, as it goes successfully, I think that other people are going to start moving in this direction, and we certainly hope that happens.
I think you're right. I think you're a trendsetter or a soothsayer. I didn't go to school that long. All right, Dean Logan, the king of all voters in LA County. And man, that would be really embarrassing if you forgot to vote, right?
I will be sure to vote.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming in, and come on after the vote, and so we can talk about how it went.
I'd love to do that.
All
Thank
right?
you so much for
Unless
having
it
me.
doesn't go well, then you don't have to come in. All right. Nice to see you, Dean Logan. All right, it's the Conway Show. We're live on KFI AM 640.